What do you do when the person you trust most with your money quietly bleeds millions from the one thing you built to help the world? Adrian Blackwood stared at the numbers on his screen, and for the first time in years, they did not make sense. To everyone else he was the Ice King of Tech, CEO of Blackwood Systems, net worth $3 billion, the man who had turned logic into an empire. In Adrian's world, everything was code. If the inputs were clean, the system behaved. If something crashed, the answer was never anger. It was audit. This started as just that. A routine internal audit on a Thursday night, the city a blur of light below his glass office. A minor discrepancy in the charity's quarterly report, 50,000 missing from a line item. Pocket change to a billionaire. But to Adrian, one missing cent was a bug. He traced the transaction trail, moving past the polished dashboards and into the raw server logs his own accountants never touched. Money left the Blackwood Charity Foundation, bounced through 2 respectable banks, then vanished into a shell company in the Cayman Islands, not a clerical error. A siphon, line after line, small transfers added up until the total glowed on the screen like an open wound, $4,500,000, $4.5 million meant for hospitals, scholarships, food. Gone. He scrolled to the authorization details, fully expecting to see a stranger's name, a compromised login, a hacker's shadow. Instead he saw the familiar letters of his wife's signature, Elena Blackwood. Chairwoman of the foundation. The woman the media called the heart of his empire. Adrian's jaw tightened. The office was silent, high above the city, as one cold thought formed: the code wasn't corrupt, the programmer was. What does a man do when he realizes the person warming his bed might be the one bleeding his soul dry? Adrian didn't scream. He shut down the monitor, picked up his phone, and walked straight to the private elevator. The numbers stayed glowing behind his eyes all the way down to the underground garage. The Maybach glided through the wet streets, raindrops racing each other across the tinted glass. From the outside he looked exactly as he always did, tailored suit, straight back, expression carved from ice. Inside, lines of code were rewiring themselves, $4.5 million, not from his personal account, not from Blackwood Systems, from the charity. From the part of his empire that was supposed to be clean. Home, sir? The driver asked. Yes. One word, level. As the car climbed the hill toward his estate, the mansion emerged from the darkness like a lit stage. $40 million of glass, concrete and curated art. Tonight it felt less like a home and more like an elaborate set where everyone knew their lines but him. Adrian? You're late, darling. Her voice floated down before he saw her. Elena stood at the top of the grand staircase, cream silk dress hugging her figure, diamonds catching the chandelier light. To the outside world she was a magazine cover come to life, the philanthropist wife of the Ice King. He watched her for a beat too long, as if trying to see the raw file under the retouched image. The audit took longer than expected, he said, walking up the steps. His tone betrayed nothing. When she leaned in to kiss his cheek, he didn't flinch. Her perfume, expensive, floral, curled around him like a well-written lie. They sat at the long dining table. Cut crystal, silverware, food prepared by a chef he barely knew. For several minutes the only sound was the clink of forks against porcelain. Elena talked about the next gala, about sponsorship tiers, about the smiling children on the brochure. He watched her fingers. Steady on the stem of the wine glass. No tremor, no slip, no hint that $4.5 million had quietly drowned under her name. This foundation, she said, eyes shining, it proves money can heal the world, doesn't it? Adrian tilted his head, or expose it, he replied. She laughed, light, musical, perfectly on cue. But there was the slightest delay, half a frame off, like bad dubbing. If he hadn't spent years reading micro-expressions in negotiation rooms, he might have missed it. What a strange thing to say, she smiled. The past is gone, my love. Why look back? Because, he thought, some past isn't past at all. It's interest, quietly compounding, he nodded instead. Playing his role. What Elena didn't know was that before leaving the office he had already pushed a new build to his private server. Her phone was cloned. Her GPS was tagged. Every outgoing message now pinged through his encrypted dashboard. He didn't know yet who Elena really was, but tonight, for the first time, he accepted that the woman across from him might not be her. What do you do when a stranger's message says your wife is not who she claims to be? Adrian stared at the line on the screen. The price just went up. Pay. Or I tell him who you really are. He read it twice. No reply. No anger. He simply saved a screenshot, like evidence from a crime scene. Then he copied the number and dropped it into his private tracing tool, prepaid. No name. Last signal, a cheap cell tower in a crowded slum on the other side of the city. Dirty world, clean data. He could have called his head of security. He could have sent a team. He didn't. Instead, he turned off the lamp and walked down the hallway to the master bedroom. Elena slept on her side, hair spread over the pillow. Breathing slow and soft. In the half-dark, she looked almost innocent. Almost. He stood at the door and watched her, like a man looking at a painting he suddenly suspects is fake. Same face. Same body. Same woman he had kissed, trusted, defended. So why did a voice in his head keep whispering, "You never checked the source code"? Back in his study, he opened a different file, not the charity, not the company. Passport scan. Birth certificate. University degree. Marriage license. Charity documents. On paper, Elena Blackwood was perfect. Too perfect. Every document appeared in the system only in the last 5 years. Before that, nothing. No school records. No hospital records. No tax history. No digital footprint. As if Elena Alvarez, the name on her old passport, had simply dropped out of the sky. Adrian zoomed in on the grainy photo from that passport. The same eyes, the same smile. Then his software pulled an old local news clipping, missing girl, Elena Alvarez, age 19. He looked from the screen to the closed bedroom door. Whoever was sleeping in his bed might be living inside a dead girl's name. How do you answer a message that was never meant for you, without letting the sender know he hit the wrong target? Adrian sat back in his chair, the blackmail text glowing on his phone. Pay. Or I tell him who you really are. Him. The ghost didn't even realize the him was already reading. He picked up a second device from the drawer, a clean phone, no apps, no contacts. He cloned Elena's number onto it through his own network. Now, for the blackmailer, every reply would look like it came from her. He typed slowly, "Who is this?" The dots appeared. Disappeared. Came back, "Someone who knows you're not Elena Blackwood." The reply finally came. 1 million. Cash. Or your husband learns everything. Adrian almost smiled. The man thought the money was the threat. He answered, "Where?" Another pause. Whoever this was, he was nervous but not stupid. Tomorrow. 9 p.m. Old River Bridge, South Side. Come alone. No security. Bring cash. If I see anything strange, I disappear. And next time, I talk to him. Adrian saved the chat, then opened a secure line. "Marcus," he said, on the other end. His head of security didn't waste words. "I'm here. I need eyes on the South River Bridge tomorrow night. No uniforms, no guns out. Full coverage. Drones, rooftops, traffic cams. The man we're meeting is scared but valuable. I want him talking, not bleeding." "Understood," Marcus replied. "You going yourself?" I'll be close, Adrian said. He looked at Elena's sleeping photo on his screen. He thinks he's blackmailing my wife. In reality, he's my first witness. On the city map, a small red pin blinked over the bridge. For the first time, the ghost in Elena's past had given himself a place and a time. How do you walk into someone else's trap and make it yours, without the hunter ever realizing he is now the prey? The next night, the river smelled of rust and old rain. The city light stopped a few blocks before the bridge, as if even they didn't want to cross. Marcus' voice came through Adrian's earpiece, low and calm. North rooftop, clear. South rooftop, clear. One male on the bridge, 30-something, alone. No visual on backup yet. Adrian sat in the back of a black SUV parked 2 streets away, engine off, lights off. No driver, no visible security. Just him, the dark, and 3 live camera feeds on a tablet in his lap. On the screen, the blackmailer paced near the middle of the bridge. Hood up, cheap jacket, jeans, sneakers. Wrong kind of man for Elena's polished world. Right kind of man for the part of her history she had erased. Does he have a bag? Adrian asked. Negative, Marcus replied. Hands in pockets. Keeps checking his phone. He's jumpy. Adrian watched the grainy zoomed image. The man's shoulders were tight, jaw clenched. Not a professional. Desperate. Desperation talked more than fear. If you applied the right pressure, let him wait, Adrian said. He asked for 9. We'll give him 9-10. People who control time control the room. Minutes crawled. Cars passed at a distance, tires hissing on wet asphalt. No one stopped. Finally, the man pulled out his phone. Typed fast. A notification flashed on Adrian's clone device. Where are you? I said come alone. Adrian looked at his reflection in the SUV window, a quiet shape in the dark, eyes steady. He typed back, as Elena, I'm here. On the tablet, the man spun around, searching the shadows. For the first time, Adrian heard his voice through a rooftop mic, thin and raw. Elena? What do you do when the only man who can tell you the truth is also the man trying to sell it? On the bridge, the blackmailer's voice shook as it echoed into the dark. Elena. He hugged himself against the cold, eyes scanning the shadows. To him, this was simple: scare a rich woman, take the cash, disappear. He had no idea the equation had already changed. In the SUV, Adrian watched him on the tablet. A nervous animal in a cheap hoodie, pacing the concrete. Marcus, Adrian said quietly, you have him? South side, 10 meters behind, came the reply in his ear. 2 men with me. No guns out. Good. No broken bones. I want his mouth working. On the screen, the blackmailer checked his phone again. Adrian's clone device lit up with another message. If you're playing games, I walk. Next call goes to your husband. Adrian let the words sit there. Then gave a single nod, as if Marcus could see it, now. From the rooftop camera, it looked almost gentle. A shadow separated from the dark, moved up behind the man. One arm locked around his chest, another hand over his mouth. No shouting, no drama. Just a short struggle, a dropped phone, then 3 shapes melting back off the bridge. 15 minutes later, the blackmailer sat tied to a metal chair in a windowless room under one of Adrian's office towers. No blood. Just fear and duct tape. The door opened. Adrian walked in, no tie. Jacket off, sleeves rolled. Calm. In control, the man blinked under the bright single light. He recognized the face from news articles and magazine covers. You're not supposed to be here, he stammered. Adrian pulled up a chair and sat down across from him. On the contrary, he said softly. You wanted to tell a story about my wife. He leaned forward, eyes steady. Start from the beginning. How do you make a man talk when money won't move him and pain will only make him lie faster? Adrian let the silence do the first part, no shouting. No threats. Just the soft hum of the AC and the buzzing light above their heads. The blackmailer's breathing was shallow. Sweat gathered at his hairline. His chair scraped once on the concrete as he tried to sit straighter. Name, Adrian said. Not loud. Not kind. Just. Final, Raphael, the man stammered. Raphael Cruz. Adrian studied him. Cheap hoodie. Nervous eyes. The kind of man most billionaires only saw through the tinted glass of their car windows. You sent messages to my wife, Raphael, Adrian said. You said she isn't who she claims to be. That you know her real face. He folded his hands. I'm listening. Raphael swallowed. His gaze flicked to the door, then back. You gonna kill me if I talk? If I wanted you dead, Adrian replied, you'd still be dangling from that bridge, not sitting in my building. He leaned in, voice lower. You're alive because you know something I don't. That makes you useful. Don't waste it. Something in Raphael's shoulders loosened. Not trust. Just acceptance. I met her 10 years ago, he said. Not as Elena. Back then she was calling herself Mara. No diamonds. No dresses. Just cheap bars and cheap scams. Images flashed in his eyes as he spoke. She was smart. Smarter than all of us. Knew how to read people, how to make them open their wallets. Or their doors. One day she shows up with new papers. New name. Elena Alvarez. Adrian felt the pieces shift. You helped her disappear, he said. Raphael shook his head. No, man. She disappeared on us. Took everything. The money. The contacts. The identity. Next time I see her. He gave a bitter laugh, on a magazine cover. As your wife. What if your wife's biggest lie wasn't the name she stole? But the man she was running from? Adrian let Raphael talk. When a man finally starts, you don't cut the flow. You just guide it. Mara was different, Raphael said. Most of us were small time. Phones, wallets, drunk tourists. She watched the rich. He gave a weak smile. Said poor people steal like amateurs. Rich people steal with paperwork. She ever talk about where she came from? Adrian asked. Raphael shook his head. Only said this isn't her last version. One day I'll be so clean even God can't trace me. That's what she used to say. He swallowed. The tape on his wrists creaked. Then this guy shows up. Victor. Older. Suit, watch, bodyguards. Not like us. Like you. Raphael nodded at Adrian. He didn't see a gang. He saw a product. He starts feeding her details. How shell companies work. How rich men hide mistresses, hide money, hide kids. He taught her. To become a ghost with a bank account. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Victor's last name. Serrano, Raphael whispered. Old school. Dangerous. He pays for new papers. New face on the system. Elena Alvarez. Says he's building his perfect asset. A woman who can walk into any charity, any boardroom, any bed. And then? She burned him, Raphael said. Took the identity, the money, disappeared. Next thing anyone hears, Victor's men are looking for her. Hard. What costs more, paying to hide a lie, or paying for the truth to finally come out? Adrian watched Raphael's face more than his words. Fear made people talk, but it also made them decorate the story. He needed the clean version. Why now? Adrian asked. She's been, Elena Blackwood, for years. Why send those messages this week? Raphael licked his dry lips. Because Victor finally found her, man. Not her address. Her picture. How? There was this article, Raphael said, eyes dropping to the table. Big charity gala. Rich people, cameras, champagne. They put her photo online. Elena Blackwood, charity angel. He let out a nervous laugh. But angels don't just fall from the sky. Someone always remembers where they crawled from. Adrian pictured the last gala. Flashing bulbs. Journalists. Elena in a silver dress, smiling like she had nothing to hide. Victor's men saw the photo, Raphael went on. One of them used to run with us. He recognized her. Next thing I know, they're at my door. You knew her. You find her. Or we bury you instead, so you thought, Adrian said quietly, if you could squeeze money from my wife, you could buy your own life back. Raphael nodded once. No excuses left. Did she pay anything before? Small amounts, Raphael said. Quiet transfers. For years. Someone's been feeding Victor just enough to keep him on a leash. But lately he wants more. He's tired of waiting. He wants her. Or a bigger number. Adrian sat back. 4.5 million from the charity. Not random. A price, she didn't just steal from me, he thought. She was buying time from a man who thinks people are property. Out loud, he said, you're done blackmailing my wife, Raphael. From now on, you only talk to me. Raphael swallowed. And Victor? Adrian's eyes were cold. We invite him to collect his debt. On my terms. How do you destroy a man who has lived his whole life hiding in the cracks of other people's secrets? Adrian left Raphael in the hands of Marcus's team with a simple order: no bruises, no heroics, just watch him. Fear was already doing enough. In his private office, the world narrowed to cold light and clean data. On one wall, a floor-to-ceiling screen showed a name he had never needed to care about until tonight: Victor Serrano. Raphael's story had given Adrian a starting point. Money did the rest. Within an hour his analysts, lawyers, and quiet contacts had fed the system everything they could scrape: old police files, offshore leaks, rumors that never made it into public reports. Victor wasn't a street thug. He was an invisible broker. The kind of man rich families used when they wanted problems to disappear without paperwork: missing witnesses, vanished mistresses, quiet bankruptcies, people who simply stopped existing on record. And now, a stolen girl remade into a charity angel. Adrian zoomed in on an old surveillance still: Victor at a casino bar, heavy watch, heavier smile. Next to him, younger, hungrier faces. The caption from a sealed investigation Adrian should not have had access to: suspected architect of identity laundering network. He looked at the glowing nodes on the digital chart. Elena's name sat near the edge, a late addition in a long chain of ghosts. Victor had built her, she had robbed him, and without realizing it, they had both walked into Adrian's territory, a world where data never forgot and revenge didn't need bullets. He typed a new instruction to his team: find me his weakness. Everyone has one. How do you look into someone's eyes at breakfast when you know men are hunting her by night? By the time Adrian left the tower, dawn was a thin gray line over the city. He had Raphael's story, Victor's profile, and one cold conclusion: his marriage bed sat in the middle of a war zone he hadn't started. The mansion was quiet when he walked in. Too quiet for his old life. Just the way he needed it now. Elena was already in the kitchen, hair tied back, silk robe wrapped around her like a scene from an advertisement. She poured coffee, smiled as if nothing under her feet was breaking. You were up late again, she said. Another crisis? Adrian kissed her cheek lightly, the way a camera would expect. Something like that. He watched her hands. Still steady. No shake when she passed him the cup. Whatever fear Victor Serrano inspired, she had learned to bury it deep. He sat opposite her at the glass breakfast table, city view spilling in behind them. I had an interesting call from the Philanthropy Council, he lied smoothly. They want us to expand the foundation's reach. Partner with new families. He took a slow sip. Ever heard of a man named Victor Serrano? It was less than a second. A blink. A tiny pause in her breathing. But to Adrian it was as loud as a gunshot. No, she said, voice even. Should I have? He held her gaze, calm, unreadable. Probably not. He prefers to stay invisible. She looked down at her plate, cutting fruit that she suddenly didn't seem hungry for. Adrian let the silence sit between them. On the surface, they were the perfect couple sharing a quiet morning. Underneath, both of them knew a third man had just taken a seat at their table. What do you do when the woman you love is both victim and accomplice? And you can't yet tell which side is heavier. Adrian watched Elena move through the day like a practiced actress. Emails, calls with donors, a meeting about hospital funding. On the surface, nothing had changed. Inside his head, everything had. He didn't confront her. Not yet. You don't walk into a battlefield without first mapping every exit. Back in his office, he pulled up 2 photos on his screen. On the left, their wedding day. Elena in white, smiling up at him, eyes shining. On the right, the old clipping Raphael had confirmed. Missing girl, Elena Alvarez, 19. Same eyes. Same bones. Different life. He forced himself to separate feeling from fact. Fact, money had left the charity in small, careful cuts. Fact, those cuts matched deposits into accounts tied to Victor's world. Fact, Elena had been paying off the man who once owned her. Victim. Fact, she had never told him any of it. Had married him under a name that wasn't clean. Had used his foundation as a shield and a wallet. Accomplice. His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Raphael's story checks out so far. Old crew, old charges, all line up. Victor Serrano is real, and mean. Adrian typed back, good. Next step, we make sure Elena is safer with me than with him. And we do it in a way that stands up in court. If he moved too soon, she would run. If he moved too late, Victor would reach her first, so he drew a new line in his mind. He would protect her life, but he would not protect her lies. When the person sharing your bed may soon be sitting across from you in court, how early do you start building the case? Adrian knew emotions didn't win in courtrooms. Paper did. He had spent 20 years designing contracts that could survive divorces, bankruptcies, and government audits. Now, for the first time, he was drawing up a defense against his own wife. He called only one person, Sarah Malik, his quietest lawyer and his sharpest. Sarah didn't work on press conferences or glossy mergers. She handled the files that never saw daylight: internal fraud, whistleblowers, executives who needed to be removed without blood on the headlines. She arrived at his private office just after dark. No assistant, no briefcase, just a tablet and a pen. You said this was sensitive, she said. I assumed that meant family. Adrian nodded. Off the record. For now. I need to protect the foundation, the company, and myself. From the same person. He laid out the numbers first. No wedding photos, no stories, just transactions. The siphoned charity money. The shell accounts. The pattern of payments leading into Victor Serrano's world. Sarah listened without interrupting, fingers moving over her tablet. Can you prove intent? She asked at last. That she knew this was wrong, and not some elaborate threat hanging over her. Both may be true, Adrian said. I plan to keep her alive. I also plan to make sure I don't go to prison for what she did. Sarah's mouth tightened. Then we firewall you. We fix the charity's books from your own funds, we document that you discovered the fraud and move to correct it, and we start a quiet internal investigation with a clear paper trail. She met his eyes, and if she runs? He asked, then we let her, Sarah said. But she leaves without taking you down with her. What happens when a thief realizes the vault doors have changed? But she can't admit she was planning to use them. The Blackwood Charity Foundation boardroom was all glass and polished wood, designed to make rich people feel noble. Today, it felt like a courtroom with better catering. Elena sat at the head of the table, flawless as ever in a soft gray dress, tablet open, notes prepared. Adrian took the seat beside her, not across from her. Allies, on paper, the CFO finished his presentation on last quarter's projects. Applause, polite smiles. Then Adrian spoke. In light of recent regulatory pressure, he said, we're tightening our internal controls. The phrase was bland enough to pass as corporate noise. But on the screen behind him, new rules appeared in crisp blue text: all transfers above a modest threshold, dual signature required, automatic alerts on offshore destinations, quarterly independent reviews signed by Adrian personally. This brings us in line with best practices globally, he continued. More transparency, more trust. Our donors will sleep better. Around the table, heads nodded. No one wanted to be the billionaire who objected to transparency. Elena's smile never slipped, but her knuckles whitened around her pen. It's a smart move, she said smoothly. Though it might slow us down on urgent cases. That's the point, Adrian replied, meeting her eyes for a second too long. Money that saves lives should never move faster than the people responsible for it. For a heartbeat, the room felt thinner, airless, then the moment passed. Papers shuffled, the meeting moved on, but Elena understood. The account she'd been feeding for years had just lost its most convenient door, and the man who'd locked it was sitting right beside her. What happens when a man who lives off other people's fear realizes someone has stopped being afraid of him? On the other side of the ocean, dawn hit a different skyline. Not glass charity towers, but an old harbor city where ships came in heavy and left lighter. Victor Serrano sat in a corner office above the docks, blinds half closed, the room thick with expensive cologne and the faint trace of cigar smoke. No name on the door. Men like him didn't advertise. On his desk, a slim laptop showed a simple dashboard. No branding, no logo. Just flows of money moving between places that didn't officially know each other. One line, near the bottom, blinked yellow: source, foundation, private donor route 7. Contact, Elena Alvarez, status, late. Victor tapped the trackpad, eyes narrowing at the list of dates. For years the payments had been small, regular, obedient. Insurance money from a girl who knew what disobedience cost. Now, silence. He opened another file. An article from a Western business magazine, Adrian and Elena Blackwood on a red carpet, flashbulbs exploding. Headline: The Ice King and His Angel. He zoomed in on her face. Same eyes he remembered from a cheap bar a decade ago. Better clothes. Better lie. A younger man in a suit hovered by the door. Maybe she's just late, he offered. Victor didn't look up. People are late when they're scared, he said softly. When they stop paying, it means someone has convinced them they're safe. He closed the laptop with a quiet click. Find the husband, he said. Find out who's been telling my property she doesn't belong to me anymore. Outside, cranes moved containers like toys. Inside, a different kind of shipment had just been scheduled. Victor Serrano was finally turning to face the Blackwoods. Section 17. When the door won't open. What does a liar do the first time their favorite door refuses to open? 3 days after the board meeting, the Blackwood charity offices looked calm. Open plan desks. Soft carpet. Framed photos of smiling children. Elena sat alone in her glass-walled corner, tablet in front of her. On the screen, a transfer form was required. Her jaw tightened. She tried again. Smaller amount. Different route. Same error. In another building across town, Adrian watched the alert stack up on his monitor. Attempted transfer, flagged route, attempted transfer, same device, no emotion. Just confirmation. Back at the foundation, Elena set the tablet down slowly. Looked out at the city with empty eyes. Then she opened the bottom drawer of her desk. Underneath folders and a charity brochure sat a slim, older phone. No apps, no mail. Only numbers. She hesitated, then powered it on. Adrian's system didn't see that phone. But his cameras saw her. Marcus had installed them weeks ago. Buried in the ceiling lights, on the live feed, Adrian watched Elena lift the burner to her ear, shoulders tight. Something's wrong, she said softly to whoever was on the other end. He's changed the rules. I can't move anything without his signature now. A pause. Then, yes. I know what that means. She ended the call, staring at her reflection in the glass wall. For the first time, Elena Blackwood looked like a woman who understood the game had finally turned against her. What do you do when you hear your wife ask another man what to do about you? Adrian replayed the call 3 times in the dark of his office. Elena's voice, small but steady. He's changed the rules. I can't move anything without his signature now. A male voice on the other end, distorted by distance and cheap hardware. Then you know what that means. Marcus stood beside him, arms folded. We cleaned the audio. Ran it through our database, he said. Voice matches one of Serrano's people. Luis Ortega. Mid-tier handler. He's been in 2 of Victor's old investigations, never charged. On the screen, a simple profile, grainy photos, half-finished police notes. A man who lived in other people's blind spots. So Victor knows she's blocked, Adrian said. He'll push her to unblock herself. Or trade something else. Like you, Marcus replied. Adrian nodded once. Let him try. But we decide the ground. They set quiet measures in motion. Extra plainclothes security around the mansion. Traffic cams near the estate rerouted to Adrian's private feed. Elena's burner number silently mirrored to his system. Every text she received, he would see. That night, dinner was almost normal. Almost. Elena picked at her food, eyes drifting to the window more than to him. Twice she opened her mouth to speak, then stopped. Adrian let the silence sit, gave her every chance to choose truth. She didn't take it. Her burner vibrated in her pocket. She excused herself to the bathroom. On Adrian's phone, the mirrored message appeared, no more delays. Tomorrow. You bring the husband and his access codes. Or you come alone. After that, we come to you. When Elena came back to the table, her smile was lighter, practiced. But her eyes had already chosen a side. What do you say when the person you love invites you to your own ambush? Adrian barely slept. Not from fear, but from planning. The message on his phone lay burned into his memory. Tomorrow. You bring the husband and his access codes. Or you come alone. After that, we come to you. Morning came soft and golden over the estate. As if nothing in the world was wrong, Elena found him in the sitting room, reading the financial section like any other day. She hesitated in the doorway a moment too long before stepping in. Adrian, she began, tone light, I got a call last night from a potential partner. Someone who specializes in discrete funding structures for international projects. He thinks he can help us scale the foundation. He didn't look up right away. Folded the newspaper, set it aside. Does this discreet philanthropist have a name? Her smile was careful. Victor. Victor Serrano. He prefers to stay off paperwork, but he's very well connected. Inside, something cold clicked into place. Outside, Adrian simply nodded, and what does he want in return? Just a meeting, she said. Tonight. Private. He wants to understand our systems, how we move funds. If he trusts us, he could bring in other families. She sat opposite him, crossing her legs, hands a little too still in her lap. I'd feel better if you came, she added. You're the one who understands the technical side. Adrian held her gaze for 3 quiet seconds. Long enough for her to wonder if he'd say no. Of course, he said at last. If a man wants to help our charity, it would be rude not to hear him out. Relief flickered across her face. When she left the room, Adrian picked up his phone and typed one message to Marcus, tonight. Private meeting with Serrano. Assume it's a setup. We treat it like ours. How do you walk into a meeting where everyone is planning an ambush? And still be the only one in control? Marcus laid a tablet on the table between them. Floor plans. Street maps. Entry routes. Serrano's people like hotels and private clubs, he said. Public enough to look safe. Private enough to make a body disappear between the lobby and the parking lot. Adrian nodded. Then we don't go anywhere he controls. He picked up his phone, opened Elena's mirrored thread, and typed a message as her. Tell him this, my husband insists on meeting at our downtown tower. Top floor, private conference suite. If he wants our systems, he sees them where they live. A few minutes later. The reply came back, Victor's handler speaking with someone else's thumbs. He doesn't like walking into other people's buildings. Adrian smiled faintly. He already has. Another message, he'll come. Tonight. 9 p.m. Just you and the husband. No security. Marcus snorted. Cute. Adrian turned to him. You'll be there. Just not where he can see you. They went through the plan, hidden cameras already built into the tower's ceilings and walls, audio recording hardwired into the building's own security system, 2 teams on separate floors, plain clothes, no visible weapons unless things went very wrong, no heroics, Adrian said. We're not there to win a shootout. We're there to get his voice. His threats, his admissions. After tonight, I want enough for law enforcement to do what they're paid for. Marcus nodded. And Elena? Adrian looked at the city through the glass. Tonight, he said quietly, she finds out whether she's standing beside me. Or between us. What do you look for in your wife's eyes when you both step into a room designed to trap the man she fears most? At 8:54 p.m., the private elevator of Blackwood Tower began its smooth climb to the top floor. Adrian and Elena stood side by side in the mirrored cabin. No security. No assistance. Just the reflection of a perfect couple going to meet a potential donor. Elena wore a simple black dress, more business than gala, hair pinned back to look serious, respectable. Only her hands betrayed her, fingers lacing and unlacing around the small clutch that held her phone. You're very quiet, she said, watching him in the glass. I listen more carefully when money is involved, Adrian replied. Especially when it comes from men who don't like paperwork. A flicker in her eyes. She looked away first. At 8:57, they stepped into the top floor conference suite. Floor-to-ceiling glass. Night city stretching out beneath them in rivers of light. A long table. 3 chairs. 2 on one side, 1 on the other. Adrian walked the room like it was any other meeting. In reality, he was checking the angles he already knew, the tiny cameras in the ceiling recesses, the mics hidden in the light fixtures, the emergency exit where Marcus's team waited 2 floors below. Relax, Elena said softly, mistaking his survey for nerves. Victor just wants to see if he can trust us. He's about to find out. Adrian answered, his phone buzzed once in his pocket. a preset signal from Marcus, subject an elevator. The encrypted notification read, Adrian pulled out a chair for Elena on their side of the table. She sat, smoothed her dress, fixed her expression into polite professionalism. At 9 o'clock exactly, a soft chime announced the elevator's arrival on the floor. Adrian didn't turn toward the sound immediately. He watched Elena instead, watched the moment her spine stiffened, her eyes flicked to the door, and her past finally walked into his building. What do you say to a man who thinks the human being sitting next to you is one of his old assets? Victor Serrano walked into the room as if he owned the floor. Late 50s, perfect suit, watch that caught the light just enough to be noticed. 2 steps in, he smiled directly at Elena. There she is, he said softly. I was starting to think you'd forgotten your old friends, Elena. He let the name hang, then added, almost lazily, or do you still prefer Alvarez? Elena's fingers dug into her clutch. It's Blackwood now, she said. This is my husband, Adrian. Victor gave Adrian the kind of look men reserve for obstacles, not equals. Of course. The genius with the clean code and the clean image. He took the lone chair opposite them, unbuttoned his jacket. I help people like you keep it that way. Adrian folded his hands on the table. No handshake, no small talk. My understanding, he said, is that you've already been helping yourself. To my wife's past. To my charity's money. For a moment, Victor's eyes sharpened. Then he chuckled. Everyone wins, Mr. Blackwood. I built the identity that let her stand beside you. She pays a small fee to keep old questions buried. You get a perfect wife with no history to embarrass you. The microphones in the ceiling drank in every word, and if we decide we're done paying? Adrian asked. Victor leaned back. Then I start talking. To regulators. To journalists. To men who don't file complaints, they send people. I own the story of who she really is. Without me, she's just a missing girl with a stolen name. And you are the billionaire who funded her fraud. Elena closed her eyes for half a second. Adrian didn't move. But inside, one thought locked into place: extortion. Identity laundering. All on record. How much is a life worth to the man who thinks he bought it years ago? Adrian let Victor's words settle like smoke in the room. Extortion, ownership, threats, all neatly packaged in that smooth voice. Every second was being captured by the building itself. So, Adrian said quietly, what's your price for staying in the shadows? Victor smiled, pleased to be asked. You're a practical man. Good. We keep it simple. 10 million, routed through channels I'll provide. You sign over some anonymous donor vehicles I can use. In return, the girl stays Elena Blackwood. The regulators never hear about my little investment. And you keep your halo. Elena flinched at the word investment. And if I refuse? Adrian asked. Victor shrugged. Then I introduce Mr. Blackwood to Miss Alvarez. I hand over everything I have.
My price is simple, 40% of the shares.
Photos,
That's a steep ask, Victor.
We can't agree to that.
Sad story
My
about
price
a
is simple,
brilliant man who
40%
fell
of
for
the
a
shares.
ghost and let her
That's a
steal
steep
from 6
ask,
children.
Victor.
We can't agree to that.
Journalists love that
My
kind
price
of
is
thing.
simple, 40% of the
He leaned
shares.
forward,
That's a steep
eyes
ask,
cold,
Victor.
understand
We can't
something.
agree to that.
My
I don't
price
need
is
to win
simple,
in court.
40% of the shares.
I just
That's
need
a
to
steep
make enough
ask, Victor.
noise that men
We
with
can't agree
badges
to
and
that.
headlines come
My
knocking
price
on
is
your
simple,
door.
40% of the shares.
Your world
That's a
runs on
steep
trust.
ask, Victor.
We can't
I can
agree to
breathe
that.
that out without
My
ever
price
pulling
is
a
simple,
trigger.
40% of the shares.
Adrian
That's a
studied
steep
him.
ask, Victor. My
Not
price is
angry.
simple, 40% of the shares.
Measuring,
That's
you
a
built
steep
her,
ask,
he
Victor.
said.
We can't agree
You
to that.
taught her how to disappear.
My price is simple, 40% of the
And
shares.
now you want me to
That's
pay
a
you
steep
not
ask,
to reveal
Victor.
your own
We
crimes.
can't agree to that.
My
Victor's
price is
smile
simple,
thinned.
40% of the shares.
Call it a
That's a steep
consultation
ask,
fee.
Victor.
We can't agree
Elena
to that.
whispered,
My
Adrian.
price is simple, 40%
But
of
he
the
raised
shares.
one hand
That's a
slightly.
steep ask,
10
Victor.
million.
We can't
Adrian
agree to
repeated.
that.
My price
And
is
if I
simple,
agree,
40% of
When the mask finally slips and every lie is spoken out loud, what hurts more, the crime itself, or the fact they thought you just pay for it? Victor's 24 hours still echoed in the glass when he stood up, buttoned his jacket and offered a hand Adrian didn't take. I knew you'd understand, Victor said. Men like us always do, when we see the bigger picture. Adrian only replied, we'll be in touch. Victor gave Elena one last, proprietary smile. Don't be late again, Mara. Then he walked out, footsteps fading toward the elevator. The door closed. The lock clicked. For the first time that night, there were no third parties in the room. Just a husband, a wife. And the truth, Elena's shoulders sagged, the performance finally dropping. She pressed her fingers to her eyes, breathing hard. I was going to tell you, she said. I just needed to fix it first. Adrian stayed seated, hands flat on the table. How long have you been paying him? She looked up, eyes wet but still sharp. Since before I met you. He built everything, the papers, the charities he lined up, the introductions. I thought if I played along long enough, I'd be free of him. You used my foundation, Adrian said, voice even. My name. Money meant for hospitals and children. I was buying my life back, she snapped, then immediately softened. I know it was wrong. But without him I was nothing. A missing girl with a fake ID and a record. You would never have even met me. He let that sit. I met someone, he said. I'm still not sure who. Silence stretched between them, the city glittering beyond the glass. Do you have to turn me in? She whispered. Adrian looked at the small red light in the ceiling, still recording every word. I have enough to bury him, he answered. Whether you get buried with him depends on what you do next. When someone has lied to you for years, how many truths do they have to tell to earn one more day of your protection? The conference room emptied slowly in Elena's breathing. Adrian had given her the line. Now he needed to see which side she chose. Look at me, he said. She did. For the first time since the audit, there was no performance in her eyes. Just a tired woman with too many names and not enough exits. I can make Victor disappear, Adrian went on. Not with guns. With evidence. With law. Tonight you helped me record more than enough to burn him. She glanced up toward the dark ceiling, where the small red light had finally gone out. And me? She asked. I signed the transfers. I used your name. I lied to your face. What does the law do with that? He didn't soften it. Without you, you look like his partner. With you, you can look like his survivor. Elena let out a bitter laugh. You want me to testify? I want you to tell the whole story, Adrian said. Every scam. Every payment. Every threat. To my lawyer. To the authorities. No more half-truths. No more secret phones. And if I run? She whispered. He held her gaze. Then Victor finds you first. And when he falls, you fall with him. I won't shield you from that. Tears finally slipped, ruining the perfect lines of her makeup. You really would send me to prison. I would rather see you alive behind glass than dead in a ditch outside some port Victor owns. Adrian replied. Those are the only two endings he offers. Silence. City lights. The faint hum of the building. At last, Elena nodded once, like signing a contract with herself. Call your lawyer, she said. I'm tired of running. When a lie has lived on your tongue for 10 years, what does it cost to finally say every part of it out loud? Sarah arrived at the tower just before midnight. No makeup, hair pulled back, dark suit, flat shoes. The look of someone who expected a long night and no cameras. In Adrian's private conference room, the world shrank to 3 people and a recording device the size of a cigarette pack on the table. A single red light blinked. Patient, Elena sat opposite Sarah, shoulders straight, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Adrian watched from the side of the table, halfway between husband and client. For the record, Sarah said, voice calm, state your full legal name. Elena Blackwood, she began, then forced herself to continue. Born Elena Alvarez. Also used the name Mara Cruz. And others. The words landed like small betrayals. Not new to Adrian's mind, but new to the air between them. Sarah didn't flinch. You understand this statement may be used to support criminal charges against Victor Serrano and his associates, and that your cooperation will be the basis of any leniency the authorities consider for you? Elena nodded. Yes. Then start at the beginning, Sarah said. How did you meet Victor? For the next 2 hours, Elena dismantled her own mythology. Cheap rooms. Petty scams. The first time Victor bought her dinner and a new identity. The night she realized the contract was not work, but ownership, every threat. Every payment. Every wire that had quietly bled Adrian's charity. Dates, amounts, names. Moments she'd buried under designer dresses and charity speeches. Sometimes her voice shook. Sometimes it was flat, almost relieved. Adrian listened to the timeline of his marriage laid out like evidence in a trial. By the time Sarah switched off the recorder, one thing was clear: if Victor Serrano wanted to keep owning her story, he was already too late. When you choose the law instead of a gun, how do you make sure the fire doesn't burn you with the man you're trying to destroy? 2 days later, Adrian sat in a very different room. No glass walls, no designer chairs. Just a government building painted the color of old paper. Across from him, Sarah laid a thick, organized file on the table. Digital backups were already in 3 encrypted drives, but paper still had its own kind of weight. Opposite them sat 2 people from the Financial Crime Unit, a senior investigator with graying hair and a younger partner who typed more than he spoke. No cameras for TV. No press. Just forms, coffee, and the quiet hum of a cheap air conditioner. For the record, Sarah said, my client is here voluntarily as a whistleblower regarding large-scale identity laundering, charity fraud, and long-term extortion involving a man named Victor Serrano. The older investigator opened the file. First page, Victor's profile. Second, Elena's signed statement. Behind that, transaction trails, surveillance stills, transcripts of Raphael's interrogation, timestamps from the recorded meeting in Blackwood Tower. You understand, the investigator said to Adrian, that this could still splash back on you. Your wife is on half these documents. Adrian met his eyes. That's why I'm here before you ever come to me. I fixed the stolen funds. I documented every correction. I'm not asking you to bury this. I'm asking you to use it. The man nodded slowly. We've had Serrano's name in our files for years. Never enough to move. This. He tapped the folder. This is different. Sarah slid over a final page. We also have a scheduled follow-up meeting with Serrano on record. Time, place, his own demands. You want him on tape making clear threats and naming his price. My client is willing to walk back into that room, with your people listening. The younger agent stopped typing. So, he said, looking up, we set the sting. You bring him in. We make sure he doesn't walk out. Adrian sat back, expression calm. I've already had him in my building once, he said. This time, I prefer he left through your door instead of mine. When justice finally moves in your favor, do you trust the badge? Or the plan you built yourself? The sting date came quicker than sleep. Blackwood Tower's top floor had been reset to look exactly like the first meeting. Same chairs. Same water glasses. Same city spread like a circuit board outside the glass. The only difference was invisible. This time, the room also belonged to the state. Hidden in a service corridor 1 floor below, Adrian stood with Sarah, Marcus, and the 2 investigators. A wall monitor showed silent feeds from every camera in the suite above: table, entrance, elevator lobby, even the reflection in the glass. "Wire check," the younger agent said, tapping his earpiece. "We hear you. You'll hear us. If Serrano escalates, we move fast." Sarah looked at Adrian. "You don't have to be the one in that room," she said. "We have enough already to make trouble for him." "Trouble isn't enough," Adrian replied. "I want him on tape naming his price, threatening retaliation, admitting he built her identity. No more shadows." Marcus adjusted the small transmitter sewn into Adrian's jacket. "If he pulls anything, you drop to the floor. My people are in before he finishes the second shot." Adrian almost smiled. "Let's hope he sticks to words. They're worth more to us." Elena waited in a smaller side office, flanked by a uniformed officer. She had offered to go back into the room with Victor, to face him as the woman he'd tried to own. The investigators had refused. "Your job is done," the senior one had told her. "Now you let us do ours." At 8:58 p.m., Adrian rode the elevator up alone. No wife, no bodyguards. Just the quiet weight of a building wired to hear every word. He took his seat at the table, straightened his jacket, and folded his hands. At 9 o'clock exactly, the elevator chimed. Victor Serrano stepped out again, confident, unaware that this time, the room was already testifying against him. What happens when a man who thinks he owns people discovers the room itself has stopped belonging to him? Victor took the same chair as before, as if returning to his office. No Elena this time. Just Adrian, calm and alone on the opposite side of the table. "I assume you've made up your mind," Victor said. 10 million is generous, considering what I'm not saying." Adrian rested his hands lightly on the table. "I have," he answered. "But before we talk numbers, I want to be absolutely clear what I'm paying for." Victor smiled. "Insurance. Silence. I keep your wife's old life in a box. I don't breathe a word about forged identities, missing girls, charity money rerouted through my channels. In exchange, you become one of my preferred clients." Above them, tiny mics caught every syllable. "And if I decided not to pay?" Adrian asked. Victor's eyes hardened. "Then I open the box. I send your regulators a full package, the fake passport, the timeline, the transfers from your precious foundation. I talk to the press. Maybe even to men who solve problems without courts. You lose your reputation. She loses her freedom. Maybe her pulse." In the control room below, the senior investigator gave a single nod. The younger one's hand hovered over his radio. Adrian didn't look away. "So you built her," he said quietly. "Sold her a name. Forced her to keep paying with stolen charity funds. And now you're selling that silence to me." Victor nodded once. "That's the business." The conference room door opened. Not with panic, with purpose. 2 plainclothes officers stepped in, badges out, followed by a third in a vest. "Victor Serrano," the lead said, voice flat, "you're under arrest for extortion, money laundering, and aggravated identity fraud." For the first time, Victor's smile disappeared. Adrian stayed seated. He didn't gloat. He didn't speak. He simply watched as a man who thought he owned everyone in the room finally realized he didn't even own his next move. When the storm finally passes, what do you do with the people who helped cause it? And the ones it almost destroyed? Victor Serrano did not leave through Adrian's door. He left in handcuffs, under cold stairwell light, past cameras he hadn't installed. Weeks later, the headlines were everywhere. underground identity broker arrested. Charity extortion ring exposed. Victor's lawyers screamed about entrapment. The recordings, the wire transfers, Elena's signed statement, Raphael's testimony, they all disagreed. The case would take years to grind through courts, but the important part had already happened. Victor's fear had finally changed sides. For Elena, it was different. Sarah negotiated until her voice was hoarse. Full cooperation. Restitution from Adrian's fortune. A guilty plea on the records that couldn't be scrubbed. In return, no orange jumpsuit, a suspended sentence, monitored freedom, a life much smaller than the one she'd worn like a costume. The divorce papers were clinical, almost kind. No screaming. No public scandal. Adrian made sure her exit was safe, not soft. A settlement enough to live, not enough to run empires. On their last day in the house, she stood in the doorway of his study. Suitcase by her side, "I did love you," she said quietly. "Even if I started as a lie." Adrian looked up from his screen, from the new foundation reports that no longer bled. "I believe you," he answered. "But I build my life on what survives an audit." That night, alone in his penthouse, he poured a single drink and watched the city. The charity was clean. The company was stronger. The ghost in This video is inspired by actual events. To safeguard the privacy of the people involved, all identifying details, including names and locations, have been changed. Fictional elements, dramatic license, and speculation have been used to create a compelling narrative. This content is intended for commentary and dramatic entertainment only. Viewer discretion advised.